From animals to humans, the lost story of our first transformation. Long before history began, when the earth was wild and untamed, creatures roamed who were neither fully human nor fully beast. They lived in tribes, spoke in growls and gestures, and followed only the instincts of survival. Among them was one tribe that lived deep within a dark forest, near a river that glowed silver under the moonlight. Legends whispered that the river carried secrets of the sky, fallen from the stars. One night, during a violent storm, lightning struck the river. Its waters shimmered with a strange light, and the tribe gathered around in fear and wonder. The eldest among them touched the glowing water. His eyes widened, and for the first time, he did not roar like a beast. He spoke. Words. Real, clear words. The others gasped, half in fear, half in awe. Slowly, each who drank from the river found their minds shifting. They began to dream not of hunting, but of tomorrow. They imagined fire, shelter, family. But this transformation was not without struggle. Half the tribe refused to drink, clinging to the life of beasts. They mocked the others, calling them weak. For many moons, war raged, half beast against half human. The forest became a graveyard of bones and silence. At last, the tribe of dreamers won. But their victory came with sorrow. They had crossed a threshold, leaving behind the world of animals forever. They built fire, carved tools, and spoke stories around flames. Yet in the darkness, they feared what they had lost: raw strength, wild freedom, and the unity of the pack. The story says that the river eventually dried up, leaving only a cracked riverbed, but its gift remained: the power of thought, of creation, and of destruction. Humanity was born, and with it, the eternal mystery. Do we truly gain more than we lost? The forgotten beginning. Long before the rise of cities, empires, and languages, the earth belonged to creatures who were not quite animals, yet not yet humans. They walked upright at times, but hunched when danger neared. They had the strength of beasts, but in their eyes glimmered something different, something unspoken, a spark of thought that had no name. These beings lived in vast forests where shadows ruled the land. The nights were darker than we can imagine, without fire to light them. Their world was filled with the growls of predators, the cries of prey, and the endless struggle to survive. Every day was a test of instinct: run, fight, or perish. They had no words, only sounds, low growls, guttural calls, sharp clicks that carried warning or invitation. They lived in groups like packs, guided not by choice but by necessity. The strongest led, the weakest followed, and no one asked why. Yet, within these packs, strange moments occurred. A mother would hum softly to calm her child. A hunter would scratch marks on the ground after a kill. A pair would lock eyes longer than needed, as if searching for meaning beyond instinct. It was as though something inside them was struggling to awaken, but the darkness of their world kept it buried. Their lives were harsh. Food was scarce, seasons unforgiving. When storms came, they hid in caves, trembling not from fear alone, but from something deeper, an unexplainable awareness that the sky's rage meant more than just rain. It was not understanding, but it was not ignorance either. It was in between. Unlike the beasts around them, they paused before they killed. Not always, but sometimes. They stared at the prey longer than needed, as if wondering what it felt. No wolf wondered such things. No lion hesitated. But these beings did. Something unsettled their instincts. At night, when the forest grew still, they gathered together. They did not speak, but their silence was heavier than sound. They looked at the stars, tiny fires scattered in the sky, and felt something stir inside them. Fear, yes, but also wonder. A question without words. Generations passed this way. Each child was born into the same struggle, but with every season, the spark grew a little brighter. They began to use stones not just to strike, but to shape. They began to remember trails, not just follow scents. They began to wait for prey, instead of chasing blindly. These were not instincts. These were choices. Still, they did not know what they were becoming. Around them, the animals remained the same. Wolves howled, birds flew, deer ran. But these strange beings were changing, silently, painfully, step by step. They were not yet human. They were something forgotten, something lost to the depths of time. And the greatest mystery of all, no one knows what moment finally broke the chain of instinct. Was it fire? Was it a word? Or was it something else, buried deep in the darkness of that forgotten beginning? Something waiting for a spark that would change everything forever. The river of change. Deep within the forest where these half-human, half-animal beings roamed, there was a river unlike any other. Its waters ran clear in daylight, but under the moon, it shimmered with a faint silver glow, as if it carried fragments of stars within its depths. The tribe both feared and revered it, never daring to drink from it directly, only watching from the banks in silence. The river had always been there, winding like a serpent through the land, its currents whispering a language no ear could understand. Animals avoided it at night, pausing at the edge and backing away with uneasy growls. Even the bravest hunters in the tribe would not cross it after dark. They felt it was alive, a silent watcher that saw more than it revealed. On stormy nights, the river came alive in terrifying ways. Lightning would strike the surface, and for a fleeting second, the waters would glow with a light so bright it blinded the eyes. The tribe huddled together, trembling, wondering if the river was a curse from the sky or a gift they were not yet ready to receive. Stories began to form, not in words, but in gestures and sounds. The elders pointed at the glowing water, then at the stars, then at themselves. Though no true language existed yet, the younger ones felt the weight of these warnings. The river was more than water. It carried a secret too powerful for them to touch. And yet, curiosity grew. Among the tribe were a few who lingered at its edge longer than the rest. They reached out with their hands, dipping fingers into its chill, feeling not just water, but something that seemed to pulse against their skin. They could not explain it, but it was different. It was alive. One fateful night, when the storm raged louder than any before, the lightning struck not once, but many times. The water glowed, rippling like liquid fire. The tribe shrieked and scattered, but one elder did not move. He stepped closer, drawn not by fear, but by something deeper, an invisible pull that made his heart race. With trembling hands, he bent down and cupped the glowing water. It ran between his fingers like quicksilver, cold yet burning. For a moment, the tribe watched in horror, expecting him to fall dead. Instead, he straightened, his eyes wide, his chest heaving as if he had seen something no one else could. And then it happened. His voice broke the silence. Not a growl, not a hiss, but a word. Clear, sharp, and filled with meaning. The tribe froze. They had never heard such a sound before. It was not instinct. It was something new, something terrifying, and yet something that called to them all. Panic swept through the group. Some fled into the forest, believing the elder had been cursed. Others gathered closer, their curiosity burning hotter than fear. If the river had given him this gift, could it give them the same? Was this power meant for all, or only for the chosen few who dare to touch it? That night, a boundary was crossed. Some of the tribe reached into the river, letting the silver water slide down their throats. Their eyes flickered with the same strange light, their voices cracking with sounds that were not animal at all. A change had begun, though none of them yet understood how deep its cost would be, or how far its echo would reach through time. The first words. The night the elder first spoke, the forest itself seemed to fall silent. The owls stopped calling, the insects quieted, even the river's current felt muted. The tribe stood frozen, staring at him as though he had become something other than one of them. His mouth had produced a sound that did not belong to beasts, shaped, deliberate, and filled with intent. It was not a long speech, not even a sentence. Just a single word, short and sharp, but carried meaning. The tribe knew it instantly. The sound pointed to something real. They felt it in their bones, as if the vibration of that word echoed inside them. Something had changed, something irreversible. At first, the tribe panicked. Some snarled, growled, trying to drown the sound with familiar animal cries. Others crouched low, eyes wide, as though expecting the sky to punish them. For no beast had ever shaped thought in a voice before. It was unnatural. It was dangerous. But curiosity gnawed at them. The younger ones tried to mimic the elder, their throats straining to form the same shape of sound. It came out broken raw, but it was their spark struggling to catch flame. The air filled with half-formed words, a chorus of attempts, part terrifying, part wondrous. The elder watched them with eyes brighter than the firelight they did not yet know how to make. He understood something they did not. Once words existed, silence would never be the same. For words were more than sounds. They were tools, sharper than stone, stronger than bone. Slowly, the tribe began to experiment. They made sounds for water, for fire, for danger. Each attempt clumsy, each meaning fragile, but each word a seed. Where once they had only pointed, growled, or fought, they now had another way to command the world. But with words came division. Those who had not touched the river mocked the speakers, hissing and howling like beasts. Why twist your mouths with broken sounds? Their eyes seemed to say. Strength needs no words. To them, this new power was weakness, an abandonment of the raw life they knew. And so the tribe split. Half embraced a new gift, eager to name the world around them. The others recoiled, snarling, clinging to instinct, refusing to abandon the ways of the pack. Around the glowing river, two futures stood face to face, one bound to instinct, the other drawn to thought. In the nights that followed, the sound of words grew louder. The riverbank became a place of gathering, where those who drank repeated words into the dark sky, shaping and reshaping them until they stuck. Each new word was like a key, unlocking doors they had not known existed. But something stirred beneath the surface of this discovery. With each word, the speakers grew apart from the non-speakers, their bond weakening. What had once been a single tribe, moving as one, now cracked with invisible lines. Words had given them power, yes, but also danger. For words could unite or divide, and no one yet knew which fate awaited them. The choice. The river had divided them, not just in belief, but in destiny. On one side stood those who drank, who now spoke in halting words, their minds glowing with strange new thoughts. On the other side crouched the silent ones, eyes sharp, muscles coiled, refusing to surrender their instincts. What had once been a single tribe was now fractured into two paths. Around their caves and shelters, tension grew. The speakers began to gather together, whispering and shaping new sounds into meaning. They named the stars, the trees, even themselves. For the first time, identity existed beyond the body. It lived in sound. Yet every new word was like a weapon pointed at the silent ones, who saw this as betrayal of the old way. The silent ones chose strength. They trained their young to rely only on claws, teeth, and speed. They mocked the speakers, calling them weak, unfit for the wild. They believed words would not stop hunger. Words would not drive back predators. Words would not kill. But the speakers saw something else. Words allowed memory. Memory allowed planning. Planning meant survival not just for the moment, but for the future. When storms came, the speakers hid together, recalling the elders' warnings. When food grew scarce, they remembered where the river fed the forest with fish. Their instincts sharpened into foresight. The divide deepened. Nights that were once spent huddled in unity became filled with hostility. The silent ones snarled when they heard whispers in the dark, as if every word was a secret conspiracy against them. The speakers, in turn, grew wary, speaking in lower tones, guarding the gift they feared would be stolen or destroyed. And then came the first true confrontation. A hunt. The two sides clashed over prey, a great beast brought down in blood and struggle. The silent ones claimed it by strength, but the speakers claimed it by agreement. They had planned the ambush, guided by words. The air filled with growls and broken speech, until claws and fists settled the matter in violence. That night, the blood of kin stained the ground. It was not the kill of survival. It was the kill of difference. The tribe had crossed a line from which there was no return. Each side retreated into the shadows, glaring at the other as though they were enemies, not family. For the first time, they faced a choice not given by nature, but by themselves. Would they remain animals, bound by strength and instinct alone? Or would they risk this new path, uncertain, fragile, and filled with questions? It was no longer about survival alone. It was about becoming something more, or losing themselves forever. The Silent Ones clung to the certainty of the present, the raw power of tooth and muscle. The Speakers clung to the uncertain promise of the future, where words could shape what had not yet happened. Each side believed they were right. Each side believed the other was doomed. And so, the choice hung heavy in the air. A choice not yet decided, but felt in every glare, every growl, every whispered word. Two worlds had been born from one tribe, and both could not survive forever. Somewhere in the shadows of that forest, destiny waited, listening to the first battle between the beast and the human, the war of two selves. The choice did not remain a choice for long. The forest could not hold two tribes walking two paths. Whispers turned to arguments. Arguments turned to blows, and soon, silence no longer bound them together. The war began not with a battle, but with a single strike, a Silent One killing a Speaker. The first blood spilled not for food, but for belief. The Silent Ones attacked with ferocity, moving as the beasts they had always been, swift, coordinated, deadly. They struck in the dark, claws and stones crushing skulls before words could warn to them. War was the old way of life, a hunt no different than taking down prey. But the Speakers had something new. They planned. They set traps, lured the enemy into ravines, and used words to confuse and coordinate. Their weapons were crude, their bodies weaker, but their minds worked like a pack of wolves guided by something stronger than instinct. The forest itself became the battlefield. Trees dripped with blood, caves echoed with screams, growls from one side, broken words from the other. The river, once a source of mystery, now ran red, carrying away the proof of their conflict. Days blurred into nights. Some Speakers learned to sharpen stones into blades, something no beast had done before. They called them by names, short sounds that bound them with purpose. The Silent Ones fought harder, relying on their raw strength, hurling rocks with crushing force. Each side thought the other cursed, unnatural, unworthy of survival. Families were torn apart. Some who had never touched the river still sympathized with the Speakers. Others who once whispered words abandoned them, fearing the wrath of the strong. Brother fought brother. Mother fought son. The tribe was no longer one. It was a battlefield of two selves, beast and human, bound by blood, split by destiny. Nights grew colder, not because of the weather, but because of the silence. The fires of words that once lit the Speakers now burned with sorrow. They whispered to one another not just about survival, but about the meaning of this war. For the first time in existence, they asked the unthinkable question, why do we kill our own? The Silent Ones did not ask. They only fought. To them, questions were weakness. They lived and died by the old law. The strong survive, the weak perish. But the Speakers carried something more dangerous than strength. A vision of tomorrow, a belief that war could decide not only who lived, but what it meant to live. Each clash carved deeper scars into the tribe. Bones littered the ground. Cries of grief echoed into the night. Yet still, neither side yielded. For the Silent Ones, surrender meant abandoning instinct. For the Speakers, surrender meant abandoning destiny. And so, both clung to their paths, even as the forest wept with their blood. The war was no longer about prey, or shelter, or survival. It was a war within themselves, the war of two natures fighting for dominance inside the same species. And though they did not yet know it, this war would decide the shape of the future, the kind of being that would inherit the earth, the price of transformation. The war raged until the ground itself seemed tired of drinking blood. By the time the forest grew quiet again, only one side remained standing. The Speakers had survived, their words and plans proving stronger than the claws of instinct. Yet their victory was not a triumph. It was a wound carved deep into their souls. The silent ones lay scattered across the earth, their bodies fading into the soil, their voices swallowed by silence. With them, something vanished forever: the raw strength, the primal unity, the untamed freedom of the beast. The speakers had gained survival, but at a cost they could not yet understand. The survivors gathered by the river, but their faces were heavy with grief. They spoke now with more ease, their words clearer, sharper. Yet every sound was a reminder of what they had done, what they had lost. They had not only destroyed their kin, they had destroyed a part of themselves. The children of the speakers looked different from the children of the silent ones. Their eyes carried more thought, their movements slower, more deliberate. They no longer darted through the trees like predators. They paused, they reflected, they planned. They were changing, but the forest no longer recognized them as its own. The animals, once wary but tolerant, now grew hostile. Wolves howled louder, stalking the edges of their gatherings. Big cats struck with sudden fury. Birds fled their presence. It was as if the natural world sensed that these beings no longer belonged fully to it. They had stepped outside the circle of instinct, and in doing so, had become strangers to the wild. The price revealed itself further. The speakers no longer trusted silence. They whispered even when no words were needed, afraid of the old ways returning. Their instincts dulled. They hesitated before danger, relying on plans and warnings rather than raw reaction. For every strength they gained, a weakness followed close behind. Nights grew colder. Without the pack's beast-like unity, they felt exposed. Without the silent one's strength, hunting became harder. Their words helped, but they could not fill the gap left by the fallen. Something vital had been cut away, and though they were alive, they were incomplete. The elder, who had first drunk from the river, grew frail. His voice trembled as he spoke to the younger ones, warning them that every gift came with a shadow. "We have gained thought," he rasped, "but we have lost the wild. Never forget what we left behind." His words haunted them, like an echo from the world they had destroyed. Some began to wonder if they had made a mistake. In their dreams, they saw the silent ones running through the forest, free and powerful, unburdened by thought. They woke with tears, asking themselves if words were worth the weight of grief and fear. But the river was silent now. Its glow had faded, its gift given, its curse sealed. And so, the first humans carried their survival like a heavy stone on their backs. They had won, but in winning, they had lost. The price of transformation was not counted in bodies alone, but in spirit, in the quiet death of a way of being that could never return. The first fire. The nights after the war were colder than any the speakers had ever known. Without the silent one's wild strength, the survivors huddled together, shivering beneath leaves and animal skins, their words trembling in the air. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and shadows pressed close around them. The forest was no longer a home. It was an enemy waiting to devour them. Then, one night, lightning struck again. A tree burst into flame, its branches crackling and twisting like a living beast of light. The tribe froze, terrified. Fire was no river, no star in the sky. It was alive, it roared, it consumed. Some fell to the ground in fear, others fled, but a few stayed. Their eyes reflected the flicker of something they had never seen before: power. The elder, his body frail, but his voice still strong, stepped forward. He raised his hands toward the fire, not in fear, but in awe. "This," he whispered, "is the tongue of the sky." His words trembled, but they carried meaning. Fire was not just danger. Fire was a message. At first, no one dared approach. The flames spat and hissed, devouring bark, throwing sparks into the night. But the storm passed, and the fire remained. Slowly, carefully, one of the young speakers inched closer, holding a broken branch. He thrust it into the blaze, then pulled it back, now burning. He screamed, dropping it to the ground, but the others gasped, not in fear but in wonder. Soon, they gathered fallen branches, feeding the flames. The fire grew higher, casting light into the darkness. For the first time, Night was not absolute. Shadows fled, predators lingered at the edge, their glowing eyes watching but not daring to cross the ring of light. Fire had made the tribe untouchable. Around the fire, they felt something strange, safety. They sat close, their bodies warmed, their fear melting away with the cold. And then something else happened. Their words grew stronger. Around the flames, they spoke more clearly, their voices carrying stories of the war, of the river, of the stars. The fire seemed to demand language, and they obey. Yet fire was not only a gift. They soon learned its hunger. If they fed it too much, it spread wildly, consuming everything. If they starved it, it died, leaving them shivering again. It was a living thing, dangerous and demanding, one that gave life but also promised death. Some began to see fire as a spirit, a god fallen from the sky. Others feared it, whispering that it would one day consume them all. Arguments flared like sparks, but no one could deny its power. For the first time, the tribe had something the forest itself bowed to. Fire changed everything. They could cook meat, soften roots, chase away beasts, and see in the night. But fire also changed them inside. The glow of the flames stirred thoughts darker than survival. Thoughts of control, of dominance, of using fire not just to protect, but to conquer. And so, the first fire burned not just in the forest, but in their hearts. A new kind of power had been born, one that gave them dominion over the night, but also whispered temptations of destruction. Humanity had crossed another threshold, though they could not yet see how dangerous this gift would become: the birth of storytelling. The first fire did more than keep the tribe warm. It gave them light in the darkness, and with that light came something unexpected. Faces glowed in the flickering flames, shadows danced across the walls of caves, and the people began to see not just the world outside, but the worlds inside their minds. At first, they spoke in fragments, broken words, gestures, half-formed thoughts. They described the hunt, the river, the storm. But soon the fragments began to grow into something larger, something shaped and deliberate. They were not merely sharing survival. They were weaving memory. Around the fire, voices rose and fell, echoing like the rhythm of the flames. They spoke of the silent ones, of the great battle, of the river's glow. Their eyes widened as the past came alive through sound, their minds painting images as vivid as the firelight itself. For the first time, history existed, not as bone or blood, but as story. The children leaned forward, their small hands gripping the ground, eyes shining with awe. They had not seen the war, they had not touched the river, but through words they knew. They could feel the sorrow of loss, the terror of the storm, the wonder of the first voice. The dead lived again in story, and the living carried their ghosts in every tale. The speakers discovered something profound. Words could outlast the moment. A cry was gone once it faded. A growl died the instant it ended. But a story lingered, passed from mouth to mouth, from night to night, from one generation to the next. It was immortality carved from sound. But with stories came power. Some discovered they could shape the tale to command others, making heroes or monsters out of anyone. A warrior could be remembered as a giant, a coward erased as though he never lived. The tribe began to see that truth could be bent, twisted, reshaped, just like fire. The elder, who had first spoken at the river, became more than a leader. He became the keeper of stories, his voice the bridge between what had been and what was yet to come. The tribe listened to him with reverence, for his words carried weight greater than claws or teeth. He was no longer just flesh, he was memory itself. Yet, in the shadows beyond the fire, doubts stirred. Some whispered that stories were dangerous, but they could give birth to fear, lies, or false gods. Already, the children feared beasts larger than they were, born only from the elders' words. Reality and imagination had merged, and no one could tell where one ended and the other began. Still, they could not stop. Storytelling became as vital as food, as natural as breath. Each night, they gathered, their words rising with the flames, their minds weaving worlds within worlds. They were no longer bound to instinct. They had discovered a new kind of magic, the power to shape reality with imagination. And so, the fire burned, and with it, stories spread like sparks into the night. Each tale carried hope, fear, and memory, echoing into the darkness of time. The tribe had unlocked something greater than strength, greater than survival. But they did not yet realize the danger of this gift, that stories could create as much as they could destroy.